What's going on, everybody? So today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's something I don't usually do. I'm not really going to do a lot, I can say that for sure. And that is sort of a teaching anybody or showing anybody how to shoot. So, and I would say really this isn't even a me showing you guys how to shoot, because I'm sure you all do just fine. Really, this is an explanation of how I shoot and why. Several people have made comments on my videos and really asking the question, why do you shoot one-handed so much? And so I thought, well, that'd be a good video discussion for us. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is how I shoot the 1911. Now, before I start, when it comes to, anything related to employing these weapons that we all love, it can be a highly electric topic, and people get really passionate and start calling each other names. And look, I'm not interested in any of that. I'm showing you what I do. You are perfectly welcome to disagree, but we don't have to club each other over these differences. So I'm just going to show you what I do and talk through that a little bit. So basically, my primary method of employing the 1911 is one-handed. My reasoning for that is my chief principle and goal with shooting is accuracy. And contrary to popular belief, a lot of people seem to think, based on the comments and things that I'm seeing people say, they seem to think that shooting with two hands makes you more accurate. It doesn't make you more accurate. It can steady your hands a little bit and, maybe help you make a shot if your hands are shaking. But really the purpose of shooting two-handed is the next shot. It's to try to absorb more of that recoil and drive the gun back on target for the next shot. So that said, though, that philosophy of two-handed shooting in the first place, not that I disagree with it. I shoot two hands all the time, but I'm not one of these guys who believes that mag dumps are a thing or shooting as fast as possible is a thing. My chief goal is marksmanship and not volume. Now, I'm not anybody who believes that they want to carry 50 rounds, and if they have to defend themselves, they're going to pull their weapon out and absolutely let fly 48 rounds. Man, that's you, okay? My philosophy is a lot more connected to what the statistics seem to bear out and how these things go, and that is I want to take as few shots as possible. They need to be well placed. They need to be controlled, not just for the purpose of, I don't want volume. There's a little more to it than that. Part of the philosophy behind that is I'm responsible for every bullet that leaves this gun. Okay, and so a volume mentality gets really risky and dangerous, in my opinion, especially when you're in a place where there's more than just you and the bad guy, which is almost always, right? So I think that's my first problem with that mentality. But then the second mentality is, what makes a pistol at all viable for self-defense? It's bullets, right? And so the idea of being in a real big hurry to give away the thing that makes this worth anything in a fight, I'm not a huge fan of that. So I'm about shot placement, marksmanship, accuracy, not volume. Now, there's some people who have a lot of hang-ups about shooting one-handed, but look, guys, I would just say we've been shooting one-handed as a species until like the last 50 years. It's actually a pretty novel phenomenon in the grand scheme of the history of handguns that we're shooting with two hands. Now, did people shoot with two hands in 1860 at some point? I'm sure they did. So I don't want to quibble over anecdotal history points. I'm just saying that the primary method of employing a pistol has always been, and even is now in a lot of ways, using one hand. Now, I think shooting one-handed has several benefits, and of course there are drawbacks. The first big benefit to me is, again, I am just able to connect really easily, even at range, with one hand. I can shoot accurately at long range. You can hip fire up close. You can point shoot within a few yards. Like, it really is a very versatile way to employ the gun. And I think it's been employed reliably for a long time that way. Now, it does have some drawbacks. If I am in a really close situation, a couple yards, and I do need volume of fire. If that's one of those instances, two hands is better, for sure. I'm not against two hands. This isn't a one versus the other. It's more of a primary versus secondary. That's the way I think of it. So shooting two hands is certainly great for if you have shaky hands. Maybe if you just need some stability, if you're not really feeling it, feeling stable, if you need to absorb a little bit more recoil and get more rounds downrange faster, absolutely, that's perfectly viable, right? And it's very common nowadays, nothing wrong with it. But I do think there's a little bit of a lost art with shooting one-handed, and I think some people don't have confidence that this is a viable way to employ their handgun in modern times. I think partly it's because we've all been conditioned that when you're going to defend yourself, everything's a light speed mag dump. Now look, we have a lot of footage, particularly with police, where that's how they seem to engage things, right? They pull out their gun and they're screaming like crazy and they're mashing the trigger as fast as they can. Well, what you have to understand is that's how they're taught, right? I have several friends who are law enforcement officers, and that's literally what they're taught. The idea is you absolutely go ham bone on the threat until it's stopped. Now, because police do it, does that make it the best thing for me? No. Because police also have like tasers that they may have to try first, and pepper spray, or whatever the department's policies are. For me, if I see the threat of someone who has the means and the intent to hurt me and it can cause death or serious bodily harm, I'm going right to lethal. I'm not stepping things up, right? And so I want to kind of avoid trying to like smash civilian and police doctrines together, because I don't agree with all that. Another one of the benefits of shooting single-handed is mobility. You do free yourself to, maybe shepherd your kids, manipulate the environment, whether it is open doors, push something out of the way, whatever the case may be, having a real strong competence to be able to employ your pistol one-handed without feeling the absolute necessity to use the second hand. Because look, I'll just say it this way. I think sometimes, and I've been this guy in the past, where you're crippled without the second hand. Like, could you shoot one-handed? Kinda, but it's probably not good. I think that we should all have the utmost of confidence with shooting single-handed, because look, it's only an enabler. It's not a disabler. And what I mean by that is learning to shoot one-handed is only going to make your ability to shoot two-handed better, because you're going to have much more control of your anatomical position, the way you point the pistol, your sight alignment, and your trigger control is going to be on point. I think it makes you a better shooter to be able to shoot one-handed. Just like, Colonel Jeff Cooper said, that any man who masters the pistol will own everything he sees with a rifle. I think that's true with shooting one-handed. Anybody who can really grab shooting one-handed and get good at it, two-handed's only going to get better. It offers flexibility with what you're capable of, I think, in a big way. Now, some of the criticisms I've seen people levy against me for shooting one-handed, I think largely are unfounded. But one of the other criticisms that people have levied is that I need to grip the gun harder so I can be more accurate. That is a misnomer. That's very incorrect. So squeezing the gun and using two hands does not make you more accurate. And let me prove this to you. So what matters with accuracy is that gun being pointed where it should be when you pull the trigger, or when the trigger breaks more accurately. Me holding the gun really tight has nothing to do with accuracy. In fact, I think I can hurt my accuracy because I'm going to be shaking and over gripping the weapon. People who believe that have a fundamental misunderstanding of ballistics in the first place. Look, guys, when that hammer falls and strikes the primer and ignites the round in your chamber, that bullet is going to be gone, long gone, before you ever even perceive movement of recoil. This is factually true based on slow-mo footage, which I'm going to roll in here. You can see that bullet is gone and the pistol never moved. These bullets are going very fast, okay? Even the slow, 45, it's going really fast. And that thing is long gone before you ever feel this pistol recoil. I'll take it a step further. If we look at the 1911 manual of 1918 and go to page 9, I'm going to read you this excerpt. Listen to this. The weight and consequently the inertia of the slide, augmented by those of the barrel, are so many times greater than the weight and inertia of the bullet that the latter has been given its maximum velocity and has been driven from the muzzle of the barrel before the slide and barrel have recoiled to the point where the barrel commences its unlocking movement. So that's a really wordy way to say the bullet is much lighter and going much faster than the slide and the barrel. And that's exactly what they're saying there. The bullet has exited the barrel and is long gone before the slide and the barrel even begin to unlock. So what does that matter to one-handed shooting? Well, because squeezing the gun has nothing to do with accuracy, right? What matters is my ability to hold the sights on target and have a clean trigger break where the pistol does not move. That way I have a clean break and that bullet will go exactly where my sights are pointed. That has nothing to do with two hands or squeezing the gun. Nothing. What two hands on the gun does is it helps you absorb recoil and get the gun back driven to the target for the next shot. So it doesn't make you more accurate. It can provide quicker recovery time of the weapon for the next shot. Now, if that's of benefit to you, by all means, shoot two hands. For me, though, I think I can shoot at an appropriate rate and cadence one-handed, particularly at range. I think this really matters when you get into shooting at any longer ranges than up close. I think the closer you get to your target, you tend to shoot faster, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's any benefit to shooting slow. I think, though, my main value point, to quote Glenn Smith, is the purpose of shooting is hitting. And that's my main value point. So I don't care about railing as many rounds out of my gun as fast as I can. I care about hits. I care about effective, accurate hits. And for me, that can be done very effectively with one hand. But I think we have to understand shooting one-handed is not any less accurate at all. All right, so now I'm going to try as best I can at this angle to basically demonstrate how I employ the 1911 with one hand. Now, it's really quite simple. Now, there are some things to think about and consider, but really the main points that I try to go for are, first of all, I want the 1911 to be in line with my forearm. You don't want to be doing this or doing this, okay? So the gun needs to be in line with your arm. And really, this is because when you point, right, you drive that pistol out and you point with your finger, you want that gun to be lined up with your eye line, have a nice sight picture as quick as possible. But also, you want the recoil to go directly straight back. When if you have a bunch of twists and turns in there, you want that recoil to be even, and you also want your body to be aligned. You want that skeletal and muscular alignment behind the pistol to better absorb that recoil. So grab the pistol straight, right? Now the way I usually grab the gun is, I basically make a fake gun. Finger forward, thumb up, okay? So my finger goes forward, my thumb is up, and of course I have a snap cap in the gun. I grip the pistol. It's in line. Obviously, I want to get as high up into the beaver tail or grip there as I can. Now, before we go on to the next portion, grip strength. This is really important. How hard do I grip the pistol? Well, the way I think of it is like a firm handshake, okay? I don't believe that you need to try to outstrength the handgun. Now, you don't want to have like too weak of a grip on it, right? You don't want to have like this dead fish handshake where people are grossed out and think you're a lizard when they shake your hand. Nobody likes that. But you also don't want to have the insecure guy handshake where like you're squeezing so hard that you're starting to shake, because generally you don't want people to think you're on the verge of shooting up a post office. So just a nice regular guy handshake, I think, is appropriate. So, because again, I'm not trying to overpower the pistol. I'm going to work with physics. I'm not going to try to, prevent what's happening. I'm going to work with what's happening. And that'll make sense in a minute. So I grip the pistol, thumb up, finger forward, in line with my arm, and I have a nice firm grip. I bring the gun up, and I have my sight alignment. Okay? Now, let's talk about trigger. Now, for me personally, I have spec'd out most of my 1911s to have a medium trigger. And the reason is that is for my anatomy. You see where my trigger finger falls when I have that medium trigger. Okay, so when I'm all the way at the wall of the trigger, when it's about to break, I have a nice neutral anatomical position, and my finger is able to pull straight back. Okay, and I can get a really clean break. For different people, though, everybody's hands are different sizes. Sometimes the distance from the back of the pistol here to the trigger is different based on the pistol. It's different based on your hands. I think the most important thing is, I don't want to make a hard and fast rule like you always have to use the pad of your finger. I think the thing you want to go for is where you are able to pull that trigger to where it breaks and you are pulling flat to the rear. Let's pretend this is my finger. I don't want to be pulling like this, because then I'm going to drive the pistol that way, right? I want to pull the trigger straight back to where it breaks straight to the rear. And I also don't want to do this. You sink too much finger in there and you're going to pull the pistol this way. Okay, so you can see how that works. So when it comes to how much finger you place in the trigger, you just need to make sure that it's breaking flat straight back to the rear. A good way to test that is if you have a good phone that will record slow-mo footage, record yourself dry firing with one hand, okay? And what you will find is you'll start to see little micro dips. And what that means is you'll see yourself right before the trigger breaks starting to do this thing. You'll start to get wiggly. You'll start to dip down because you're anticipating, or maybe the trigger's too heavy. But a real good indicator, if you've got your finger too far out or too far into the trigger guard, you'll notice when it breaks, the sight will pop left or pop right. So I don't make hard and fast rules about what part of my finger I use. It's all about breaking flat to the rear so that the sight stays straight when the trigger breaks. Now, here's a big mistake a lot of us make. We think that if we slow bake that trigger, that we're going to get a better result. And what I mean by that is we pull the trigger really slow. Let me show you what that looks like. So pull, 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 right? We think that the longer we bake the trigger, the more accurate our shot's going to be. And that couldn't be further from the truth. That's where you're going to get into this motion right here. You're going to start getting a waggle because you're under tension for too long, right? So here's an exercise that I would recommend you do, and this is really a good one to do with friends. What you do is it's called a compressed break drill or a compressed time drill. Essentially what you're going to do is you have a friend count down from 5, and the goal is to have the trigger break before 5 seconds goes down. And what you want to do is not rush to pull, but you also don't want to take too much time. And so what you do is you pull a consistent speed. You want a consistent pull where it's like 1, 2, 3, break, right? You want this smooth. You don't want to get to the wall and then start pushing and, oh no, I'm taking too long, but I don't want to take too long and I got to push, but don't rush. And then that's where things get wacky. Okay. So what this drill does is it looks something like this: 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay. So I'm applying a consistent pressure, consistent one speed until that trigger breaks. But then we want to speed it up because we want that consistency to move a little faster. So we'll drop it at 3 seconds once we start getting that down. 3, 2, 1. Okay, one more time. 3, and by the way, a good way to do this is like 3, 2, 1, bang. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Now, what you want to test for while you're doing this is not just pulling the trigger, but what are your sights doing? 3, 2, 1. I want a really super still front sight when that trigger breaks. And you eventually get it down to where it's about 1.5 seconds, right? Where you're having a smooth, consistent break every single time. So that's my biggest piece of advice there with the trigger is once you get your sight picture up there, don't waste a bunch of time pulling that trigger slow. Compressed break, 3, 2, and that's what I do to myself in my head is I'm counting down from 3, and I'm forcing myself to not rush it, but also let's get moving. Let's get a consistent pull going. 3, 2, right? Okay, so we've talked about indexing the pistol properly, high up, thumb up, finger forward, then we index the trigger. Obviously, when we press out, we turn the safety off. Sight picture, compressed time break, 3, 2, 1, bang. Okay, now at this stage, what do we do with recoil? Nothing. Now, this is the most controversial take, and this is where people have criticized me because I don't really fight recoil sometimes. And here's why. Recoil has nothing to do with accuracy. Again, the bullet's long gone before the gun ever recoils. So what do I care about the pistol flopping around for? The only reason people care is subconsciously there is a social stigma around people who can't control the pistol. Now, I can control the pistol. I'll throw footage in here showing full fat 45 ACP ball. I can run the gun flat. But what it takes to keep that gun flat is a lot of tension, and tension does not translate to accuracy. So I don't fight the recoil. What I try to do is use my own weight, my own musculature, my own skeletal structure to absorb that recoil. And I have a preemptive passive recoil absorption technique. And it's nothing new. I didn't come up with it. But essentially, here's what I'm doing. I am pressing forward. When the gun goes off, I don't fight the recoil down. I'm not trying to get the gun down. I'm pushing forward. So that when the gun recoils, it snaps forward. See, I'm pushing forward. If I'm pushing down, watch what happens. You see that? See, I even bopped the desk. So I want to push forward so the gun snaps forward. And that's what I'm doing when I'm shooting even one-handed, is I'm leaning slightly forward, sort of, not over my toes, but I'm putting weight forward and I'm leaning into the gun so that when I fire, the gun recoils, it's going to go up, but because I'm pushing forward, it's going to come right back where I want it. I don't fight recoil, I let it happen. So when I say, what do we do with recoil, and the answer is nothing, that's exactly the answer. The answer to recoil is a good grip and applying force forward so that your muscles, your skeletal structure, everything is going to just snap the gun back forward. Now, as I've stated before, the closer I get to my target, if I need to, 2 hands, I'm going to drive the gun and I'm going to reduce as much of that recoil as I can, and it's going to be pop, 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 right? Something like a bill drill or something like that. But the further back I get, it's going to be marksmanship, and that's why one-handed works, is because I don't care about recoil. I don't care about volume of fire. I need to make hits. That's what counts. The reason we shoot is to hit, to quote Clint Smith once again. So the gun goes off. Now I reset, okay? What I don't want to do is fire and immediately come off the trigger. Now, I know some competition guys teach that I think they call it trigger bouncing, where you're literally boom, boom, you're kind of spanking the trigger. I'm not a fan of that. I shoot way more accurately when I get a break, bang, the gun goes off, I come back to sight picture, release, I get a reset, and I rinse and repeat. Again, that's sort of a play-by-play in how I approach shooting the 1911. And as you'll see with some of the footage that I've rolled through as this video has gone on, it's done with great effect. I'm not bragging. Again, I was taught by absolute geniuses, but this works. And look, these are not my ideas. Again, humans have been shooting one-handed with pistols for a long time. And so it's nothing new, and I just believe it's still a viable option. So there's a lot of reasons why I shoot one-handed, but here's another big one. Let's talk about, actually keeping control of the gun when you're sweating. So a lot of people want super aggressive texturing, right? On the back strap, they want aggressive grips. Sometimes they'll do grip tape if it's like Glocks and things like that. And everything's super aggressive. And really the purpose is for the left hand. We sacrifice so much for the left hand. And I just want to say it this way. The left hand is not what saves you. It's your right hand. So for me, when I'm super sweating, right? Absolutely soaked, which is pretty much all the time here in Florida. We get like 10 days a year where it's below 80 degrees. What happens is you're holding the pistol and this thing keeps happening, right? And it has nothing to do with texture. It's fingers slipping off of fingers. And this is, again, why I think shooting one-handed is so much better, because you just give up on that endeavor. I have found that in trying to keep my left hand on the pistol when I'm in that situation where things are really, soaked, you spend so much mental effort and physical effort trying to keep the left hand on the gun when you could literally just go one-handed and give up and actually make some hits. And so I think one-handed is much better in that regard as well, because you just give up that endeavor. Stop trying to keep your left hand on the gun. Now, another thing that I will do sometimes too is, instead of trying to do super grip with the left hand, I will literally just support, just touch. And so my right hand is out. It's almost like a weaver. You could look at it that way. Now, I'm not pulling back really hard, but essentially I'm just touching my hand there just for a little stability. But when the gun recoils, I allow it to do what it does. Doesn't matter if it flops. But I think that's a real advantage of being very good at shooting one-handed as well. It doesn't matter how sweaty you are. You have control of the pistol, and you can make hits reliably. Now, obviously, the drawback to shooting one-handed, the big one, is rate of fire. Now, you can speed that up a little bit with a lighter shooting gun. Obviously, 45 is a little bit of a thumper. But as you'll see in some of these clips that I'm going to throw in, you can still get on it, I think, fast enough. But that is a drawback to shooting one-handed. But I just feel like, look, if you're that close and you feel like you need to go to two hands and control that recoil and really get this thing running quickly, you can. But as a general rule, I think in personal defense and in warfare, single-handed use has been used for a long time, and that's what I do. So there you go, guys. That is how and why I shoot one-handed. Look, the proof's in the pudding. You can see by the footage. Again, I'm not trying to brag, but I'm making hits, consistent, solid hits, as good as I can two-handed. The only thing two hands gets me is a little more speed up close. It does not earn me any accuracy at all. Look, I would recommend you try it. I think you'd be surprised that if you can really get yourself stable, get rid of the shakiness, right? And start really mastering that trigger, you would start to realize shooting one-handed, I think you'd have an epiphany, as I did, when people showed me that it is actually really accurate, like really accurate. So as always, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts, and let me know what you do. I'm sure the overwhelming majority of you shoot two-handed, and hey, like I said, no shade there. I'm not trying to create red versus blue here. This is just an option. I think it's a little bit of a lost art, and I still think it's a really good way to shoot. So hope you guys found that interesting and helpful. Until next time, we will see you.